Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be doing more of like an old style Niah video. It's going to be an advice-based video on the subject of chronic illness and depression and why it so often can go hand in hand. So if you think that's a subject that may interest you, or it's something that you yourself are struggling with or struggling to understand, then please make sure that you carry on watching this video, as I really hope that it's going to help you. Before we get into it, if you could just make sure that you're subscribing to my channel and turning your post notifications on so that you never miss out on any of my new uploads, that would help me out so much. And if you're on other social media channels, then make sure that you're following me on Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat and TikTok to keep up to date with me. I feel like I look really white. Anyways, now that that's fixed, let's just get into the video. I wanted to talk to you guys about chronic illness and why it can so often go hand in hand with depression. So I guess the first question that we need to ask ourselves is, why are they connected? So one of the reasons that chronic illness and depression are so interlinked are because when you develop or are diagnosed with a chronic illness, it can cause such extreme and dramatic changes to your life as you know it. You know, you might not be able to see people much because you're so often ill, or you may have just had to give things up altogether that you absolutely loved doing but can't do anymore because your health doesn't allow you to. So when those changes are made to your life and you are suddenly without those things, you can feel grief towards your old life or your old self, because the bottom line is living with any chronic illness is very difficult. It's not always easy to maintain your mobility once you get ill. So like me, you may have to start adjusting to the fact that your body is not physically able to do all of the things that you maybe used to be able to do with ease. You can feel a massive lack of independence because when you have a chronic illness, it can make it borderline impossible to do things that you enjoy without feelings of pain, disappointment or guilt because of the fact that you may need to always ask someone to help you with whatever you want to do. But it's actually really normal to go through this mourning process or this grieving process for your old self and for the life that you knew before you had your illness or had it to the severity that it is now. Because in effect, you are grieving for who or what you thought you were, but because of the illness, you are now realizing you're not. For example, before I got ill, I thought I was a fun-loving, spontaneous lover of the seaside with a career in car insurance. My life honestly could not have changed more if I'd have tried. I also wanted to touch on how a physical illness can start to impact your thoughts and feelings and sometimes turn into mental illness. So chronic illness can massively impact your self-confidence because you're so often faced with challenges that you find yourself failing time and time again, even though it's not a difficult task. I think in my situation, a really monumental point for me was when I began to accept the fact that it's not realistic for me to aim to do certain things every day. You know, it's not fair on myself to expect myself to do things like take a shower every day or go outside when it's raining. But before you reach that point where you accept that those things aren't doable for you, in the early stages of the chronic illness especially, you very much can just feel like you fail or cannot complete anything. I also think it's important for us to talk about why you are so wrong for thinking or feeling that you're coping badly. Although any illness can trigger depressed feelings, the risk of chronic illness and depression gets a lot higher with the severity of the condition and the amount that it affects your life. For example, say that you get tonsillitis and you're in bed for 2 weeks with tonsillitis while you recover. You know, when you think back to times that you've been in that situation or similar situations, you may remember that you felt absolutely helpless, or when recovering from an operation or something similar, you do go through those same feelings of sadness. But with chronic illness, of course, the illness comes back every day. There is no end point. There is no point at which you get to get up and be okay again. And I think the open-endedness of it, personally, I think that incites almost a feeling of doom on the person, and I personally feel that it's that feeling that can take those thoughts from just sad thoughts or feelings to a mental illness or to depression. Did you know that it's estimated that up to 1/3 of people diagnosed with a serious medical condition have symptoms of depression as well? I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's normal to experience symptoms of depression after or when you're diagnosed with an illness. It's just that for some people, the sadness will pass as they adjust to the illness and as they come to grips with the condition and its implications, and just learn its ups and downs, basically. If those feelings of sadness don't go away after you feel that you have managed to establish a bit of a balance or a bit of a routine almost around this new life or this new you, if you begin to not want to sleep or want to sleep all the time, or either not want to eat or cannot stop eating, or even if you just don't enjoy anything that you used to enjoy or that you usually would enjoy, you maybe are at a point where you're suffering a little bit more from your physical illness than you've maybe had the awareness on your own to realise. Or maybe you just don't have people around you that are close enough to you to recognise these changes in your behaviour. But this is me telling you that I can see the changes. You're not strange for having changed after being diagnosed with this, and I just want to remind you that seeking help is the only way that it gets better. So now I want to talk about what you can do to help yourself. One of the most important things is being able to identify or to recognise what triggers you. As for me, personally, I know that my triggers are the following things. The first and main one being a lack of sleep. Lack of sleep affects me massively. I have no patience. If my energy's low, then I don't tend to want to use it on things which are not going to contribute to making me feel better. Also, when I'm tired, it just seems that pain feels worse. Pain is less bearable. Maybe that ties in with the patience thing, but pain just feels that little bit more when you're tired. Do you know what I mean? And also, when you're running on a lack of sleep, you do things wrong. So therefore you make yourself use more energy because you usually are just a bit not with it. And that for me really triggers me because it feeds into the idea that I am useless or incapable, which is something that I've worked really hard in therapy to kind of undo. I'm not useless or incapable, I am just ill, and there are certain limitations that my body now has, but when I'm running on a lack of sleep I find it a lot harder to remember that, and it is definitely a lot easier to get back into that habit of negative self-talk and just basically telling yourself how shit you are. Like, it's just not helpful for anyone, but that's what a lack of sleep does to me, so I tend to try and avoid that as much as possible. Stress affects me massively as well. When I was growing up, I was raised in a household where people didn't deal with stress in a contained way. I learned lots of bad behaviours, such as avoiding problems, shouting or verbally attacking other people, to express myself, sleeping at strange, unsociable hours to avoid feeling a certain way, and loads of other unhealthy behaviours that I've had to work really hard to try to unlearn as an adult. But I do find that the more aware I am of these things, and by trying hard to understand what the underlying feelings are when I do those things or behave that way, and it's much easier to kind of deter yourself or remember in the moment from behaving in that way. To recognise if stress is a trigger for you and makes you act out, it's really helpful because it kind of makes you be a bit more honest with yourself, in the sense that, you find yourself in situations where you're kind of like, I don't have a point here. Like, I don't have a right to be angry because I'm just stressed. I'm just triggered by whatever's going on elsewhere in my life, and maybe I need to address the source of the stress rather than letting it play out in my everyday conversations or everyday situations that just aren't related to the source of why I'm being triggered. Isolation triggers me. So as a rule, when I notice that I haven't had any fresh air for a hot second, or I haven't had a conversation with anyone outside of my household in a while, I try my best to force myself to just leave the house. Even if it's just to go to the shop or to see my in-laws, it helps a lot. I find that sometimes when you isolate yourself, it can kind of catapult you into this really weird headspace where you kind of become consumed by your own world and your own problems or sadness, and you kind of forget that the world is continuing to spin whether you're in that weird headspace or not. And I think isolation or isolating yourself really adds to that, and it's much harder to break out of that headspace when you're not in the real world and amongst other people. Another trigger for me is letting people down. Oh my god, that triggers me like nothing else on this entire planet. I always spiral into a depressive state when I have to cancel on someone or I have to let someone down. But when you live with chronic illness, you have to learn how to cope with this, which is obviously much easier said than done. And I think it triggers me because it reminds me of the person that my illness has made me become. It reminds me of the fact that my body doesn't work the same way as it used to. And it reminds me of the fact that my friends and my family are having to tolerate or deal with this less capable version of me. There are ways to avoid this. I avoid overcommitting to things. I personally feel that when you're a chronically ill person, transparency and honesty is what is going to get you through, and it's really going to help the people around you to start to accept and understand what you're going through. You will have to shift your expectations of yourself, and when people invite you to something, it's really important that you start to realistically think about if you are physically capable of committing to that plan. I want you to make that decision based on you now, not the old you. And if you can't see yourself being physically capable of enjoying yourself at whatever the motive is or the plan is, if you can't see yourself being happy to be there, if you can't see yourself being engaged with the people there and in the conversations over your symptoms, I would usually give it a miss. Because not only are you overcommitting to something that you know in your heart that you cannot promise to deliver, but it also reinforces boundaries that you have with your friends and family, and they will start to learn that if you don't feel that you're capable of things, then you will not force yourself to do it. And it will slowly make people start being aware of the fact, you know, that even if the plan is really fun and everyone's looking forward to it and everyone's talking about it, your illness doesn't waver depending on how fun the plan is. It starts to allow things to set in for other people, and it starts to make them have that thought process of, wait a minute, she really wanted to come to this and she's not here, you know, she must really not be well. It is also so massively important to not ever give up on your treatment plan when you are feeling depressed. It's so much easier when you're feeling down and depressed to just give up on yourself. But when you have a chronic illness alongside depression, you quite often have a lot of other responsibilities that you actually have to stick to, but it can feel near enough impossible to stick to or meet all of those expectations that your physical illness has of you when you're suffering mentally. But you have to remember that if you allow your physical health to get worse, you can almost guarantee that your mental health will follow. So don't give up on what you need to do, no matter how difficult it is or how you feel. Take your medication. Don't ever stop taking them abruptly or without warning. Maybe consider going to speaking therapy if you're struggling to cope. And consistently practice and use the strategies and coping mechanisms that your therapist teaches you, because they will help. You know, like I say, it's not always easy to focus on your physical illness and what that needs of you, as well as depression as well. But if you can keep a hold of your treatment plan for your physical illness, then you have a much better chance of being able to target the depression or the mental illness with a separate treatment plan, such as therapy and stuff like that. And the last bit of advice that I want to give you is remove toxicity or frequent triggers from your life. You'll find that your mood will improve and your ability to feel better about yourself will get better as each day passes. Toxic people should truly be avoided at all costs. They can lower our self-esteem, which as a chronically ill person, it's something that we need to maybe focus that bit extra on building and strengthening, because we suffer from pain and illness every single day. I feel like as a chronically ill person, no one is going to criticize you or be as hard on you as yourself. It's hard enough to maintain your own self-esteem and filter out your own everyday criticisms without having to filter out the criticisms of all of the people around you who are meant to be your support system. Nah, not me. Stay away from people who make you feel shit about yourself. Cut people out of your life who take advantage of you, and know the signs of a toxic ass bitch. Like, start to notice and start to pick up on the fact that if someone talks shit about someone else as soon as they leave the room, like if they turn around to you and they're like, after they were just smiling in someone's face and now they're talking about their outfit or their hair or something, just know that those types of people will do you that same way.
It ain't none of cut that bitch off. Snip, snip, ho. Snip, snip, ho.
So you guys, that is the end of this video. That is the advice that I can give you for dealing with chronic illness and depression and when they go together, because I personally suffer with both, and it's a difficult life and it's not always easy to navigate through, especially when you don't have people around you who are going through similar things. So I wanted to make this video to help anyone or to reassure anyone out there who is feeling the same way as me and thinks that that is not normal, or that they maybe can't bounce back from it, because it's not true. I hope you guys know that if any of you ever need me or need to talk, then please just reach out to me via any of my social media channels. I really do know what it's like to not have someone to talk to, and I would hate any of you guys to ever feel like that, which is why I made this channel. So please don't ever forget that you can come to me if you're going through something like this and you feel that no one understands. I'm gonna understand. As always guys, please make sure that you're subscribed to my channel and that you have your post notifications turned on so that you never miss out on any of my new uploads. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.